Ring-a roses, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The eerie echo of the childhood chant lingered in Dr. Lila Chen's mind as she gazed into the abyssal waters that embraced the steel cocoon of the submersible. Her hands, though steady at the controls, were betrayed by the thin shimmer of sweat on her brow. Not even the cold touch of the deep could soothe her innate fear of darkness. The descent was a slow spiral into the belly of the Mariana Trench, where light dared not follow. Around her, bioluminescent creatures danced like ghostly apparitions, their alien forms a contrast against the oppressive void beyond. Even with years of study under her belt, every flicker in the periphery set her heart racing, a drumbeat out of sync with the gentle hum of the vessel. Lila's thoughts were a whirlpool, drawing her back to a time where darkness was a blanket too heavy to push away. She never spoke of it, the night that shaped her, but it clung to her like a shadow. In the crushing depths, that shadow seemed to grow darker, deeper. Sleek and somewhat foreboding in its design, the underwater facility ahead was a marvel of human ingenuity. An outpost teetering on the edge of humanity's reach. The structure glowed with a sterile blue light, casting an otherworldly glow on the surrounding seabed. "Welcome to the Abyssal Eye," crackled a voice through her radio as Lila docked with practiced precision. It was Dr. Emilio Reyes, head of research and her point of contact. "We're excited to have you join us, Dr. Chen." Her arrival was met with curious eyes, some eager, others weighed by dark circles and a hint of something unsaid. Lila offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes as she stepped into their world, a symphony of metal and glass cased within ancient rock. The team was diverse, each member a specialist drawn from corners of the globe with promises of uncharted discovery. Yet amidst introductions and handshakes, there was an undercurrent that set Lila's nerves on edge. Whispers were cut short with her approach, gazes darted away too quickly, and smiles were too taut to be genuine. As she settled into her new quarters, a room that felt more like a cell with its view into endless blue, Lila Chen could not shake the sense of isolation that sunk its teeth into her. Here in this technological wonder beneath the waves, humanity's footprint seemed so small, so fragile. Outside her window, something flickered past, too fast to catch, but enough to make her breath catch in her throat. She told herself it was just one more creature from the deep. Sleep would not come easy that night. Every creak and groan of pressure against metal whispered secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. But as she lay in bed staring into the liquid void, Dr. Lila Chen knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay hidden in these waters was watching her just as closely as she intended to study it. And in the back of her mind, an unsettling thought took root. Down here, where humanity has no place, what if something doesn't want to be found? Chapter 2: Unexplained Phenomena. As the abyssal waters embraced the facility like a shroud, Dr. Lila Chen swam with the alien shapes of deep-sea creatures passing by the reinforced windows. The pressure of the ocean's depths seemed to press against her skull, whispering secrets in a language she couldn't understand. The team, a collection of faces weathered by isolation and lit by the cold glow of bioluminescent tanks, watched her with eyes that held stories untold. Her workstation, a cathedral of screens and dials, became her sanctuary in the ghostly dance of underwater life. She cataloged creatures that defied the imagination, fish with transparent flesh, their hearts visible as they beat against the pressure, crabs armored like knights of old, their claws snipping at invisible foes. Amidst the arcane wonders, oddities began to surface. Tools vanished only to reappear in impossible places. The sonar pinged erratically, painting images of massive, shifting shapes where there should have been nothing but the crushing void. One evening, as Lila peered into a sample of trench water magnified 1,000 times, she saw something gaze back. A flicker of movement at the edge of sight, a shadow within shadows, a form that was there and then not, as if it realized it was being watched. Her breath caught as she replayed the footage, but found nothing. It must have been a trick of tired eyes. In the canteen, hushed voices carried unease like contagion. Murmurs passed between lips too chapped from recycled air. "I swear I heard someone calling my name last night," confided Alexei, his Russian accent thick with worry. "But when I looked, There was only darkness and silence. Mia, the young intern whose smile had long since faltered under the weight of the deep, nodded timidly as she pushed food around her plate. The currents speak in strange ways here. Lila listened, but did not speak. Her dreams had become haunted canvases splashed with inkblot creatures that left her waking with a start, heart drumming in uneven rhythm. She found solace in her research notes, but even they betrayed her. Her handwriting warped into scribbles that resembled no language she knew, sentences fragmented as if by an external force. Then came the power flickers, brief moments when reality blinked and plunged them into an abyss darker than the trench itself before roaring back to life. One such instance lasted longer than a blink. In the consuming darkness, Lila felt it, a presence that hummed through her bones, a vast intelligence that knew no sunlight. The emergency lights stuttered on to reveal the team standing motionless, their faces turned toward her as if they shared in witnessing an apparition dissolving just out of reach. "Did you feel that?" Lila finally dared to ask, her voice barely more than a whisper lost in the depths. There was a collective pause before they all exchanged glances, some shaking their heads while others remained silent with mouths agape as if to scream or speak, but found themselves with no words to express their terror. They resumed their duties with mechanical precision once power was restored, but a tangible dread had woven itself into their midst, a silent acknowledgement that something unexplained lurked within and without their metallic haven. And as Lila lay in her bunk that night, the porthole revealed an endless night peppered with bioluminescent constellations. She could feel it watching once more, the abyss, not just looking but seeing into her very soul. It whispered promises of understanding and madness intertwined as inseparable as DNA's helix. As sleep tiptoed around Lila's consciousness, elusive and taunting, she pondered whether knowledge was truly worth its cost, or if ignorance was indeed a bliss too precious to forsake beneath the wave's eternal gaze. Chapter 3. Haunting Discoveries. Under the flickering lights of the research lab in the deep, Dr. Lila Chen sat surrounded by pressurized silence, a silence so heavy it seemed to squeeze her very soul. The faint whir of technology was the only sound that dared to pierce the quiet, a stark reminder of the abyss just beyond the reinforced walls. Lila's fingers danced over the keyboard with a rhythmic clack, clack, clack as she documented the newest findings. The creatures brought up from the depths were like none other, twisted and malformed by the crushing pressure, with too many eyes that seemed to stare back with knowing malice. Their bioluminescent glow cast eerie shadows across her notes, creating patterns that made her skin crawl. She leaned in closer to the specimen tank, her breath forming a fog on the cold glass. That's when she heard it, a whisper, soft and insidious, as if the sea itself was speaking to her. She jerked back, glancing around the empty lab. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices that weren't quite human. Lila clutched at her ears, trying in vain to silence them. Sleep eluded her that night, as she tossed and turned in her bunk. The facility's hum was replaced by those otherworldly murmurs that seemed to resonate from the very core of the trench. Her thoughts spiraled into madness, images of grotesque sea creatures entwined with memories she'd rather forget, memories of being trapped in darkness as a child, helpless and alone. The next day, Lila peered over the edge of an abyssal chasm they had yet to explore. The ocean's depths beckoned with a mesmerizing beauty, the undulating fronds of bioluminescent coral casting a ghostly light over alien landscapes. Yet it wasn't the sight that enthralled her. It was the feeling of being watched by something ancient and unfathomable from within those dark crevices. During a dive, Lila's submersible's lights flickered erratically as she approached a rift in the ocean floor. A cloud of sediment erupted without warning, as if something massive had stirred in the gloom below. Her heart raced, her breaths came in short gasps. She thought she saw shapes moving in the dust, a fleeting glimpse of tentacles, or was it merely shadows? Back at the facility, no one else admitted to hearing whispers or seeing unexplained shadows. Her peers exchanged worried glances when they thought she wasn't looking. Lila felt their skepticism like a cold draft. Was it just paranoia, or was there something more sinister at play? Her research became an obsession. Every clue led to more questions. The samples showed anomalies, DNA sequences that shouldn't exist, proteins that defied categorization. It was as if evolution itself had taken a different path down here in this alien world beneath the waves. One evening, as twilight consumed what little light filtered down from above, Lila detected an anomaly on a thermal scan, a fluctuation in temperature where there should have been only cold stability. She plotted a course for another dive, ignoring protests from her colleagues. "Be cautious, Lila," one warned with furrowed brow. "The mind plays tricks under such strain." Despite his words, she couldn't shake off the feeling that these weren't tricks at all, but glimpses into some hideous truth lurking below. As Dr. Chen prepared for descent once more into the enigmatic chasm, she couldn't help but feel like this time she wasn't just pursuing scientific discovery. She was being lured. The facility shrank behind her as she descended alone into the ever-waiting maw of darkness and unknown dread. The whispers grew louder as she sank deeper into the abyss, as if eager for her return, sending chills down her spine that even the icy waters could not conjure. It was then she realized it wasn't just fear she was feeling. It was anticipation for what twisted secrets lay waiting in the unyielding blackness below. Ring-a-ring-a roses, a pocket full of posies. Hush, hush, hush! We all fall down. In the sterile coldness of the underwater facility, where metallic groans and the hum of machinery were the only companions, Dr. Lila Chen found her mind spiraling into the abyssal depths of isolation. The confines of her quarters seemed to shrink with each passing day, the walls pressing closer, as if intent on suffocating her with the weight of the ocean above. Lila's once vibrant eyes, mirrors to a soul rich with curiosity and determination, now mirrored the murky darkness of the Mariana Trench. In them was a flicker, a shadow, that danced just beyond her line of sight. It teased at the edges of her vision, an unfathomable presence that made her question if she was truly alone. The facility itself was a marvel, a testament to human engineering amidst an alien world, but for Lila, it had become a high-tech prison. The steel corridors echoed her every step, a constant reminder that there was no escape from this underwater tomb. At night, when sleep proved elusive, Lila's mind wandered through the tangle of her past, a past she had thought buried deeper than the trench. Memories clawed their way to the surface. Whispers of a childhood spent in shadowed corners, hiding from unseen menaces. Recollections of her heart racing at every unexpected noise in the night. Her colleagues began to take note of her odd behavior. Murmurs traveled through the facility's grapevine, a network as tangled as the wires and tubes that kept them alive. "She hasn't been herself," they'd say in hushed tones over meals they barely tasted. "It's like she sees something we don't." Dr. Javier Mendoza watched Lila with an analytical eye. His background in psychology, though not his primary role here, gave him an edge in understanding human behavior under stress. He approached Lila one evening as she stood gazing out of a porthole into the vast darkness. "Lila," he began gently, "you know you can talk to me, right? Whatever it is you're going through, we can weather it together." She turned to him slowly, her expression unreadable. "Javier," she whispered, "do you ever feel like we're not alone? Like there's something out there in the dark watching us?" He considered her question carefully before responding. "The mind can play tricks on us in isolation, but our fears, they don't have to define our reality." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden shudder that ran through the facility, a groan that seemed to come from the very bones of the earth beneath them. For a moment, they shared a look of unspoken dread before parting ways for the night. Days melded into nights with little distinction as Lila's paranoia deepened. She scrutinized every shadow that danced across her path and recoiled from every unexpected sound that pierced the silence. Her team members exhibited varying reactions to her distress, some with concern etched across their faces, others with skepticism clouding their judgment. Tensions rose like heat from a thermal vent, searing and inevitable. It was during one particular research dive that Lila's fears reached their zenith. As she piloted the submersible into a previously unexplored canyon within the trench, she heard it, a voice, soft yet insistent, calling her name from beyond the glass. "Lila." She froze, eyes wide with terror. The voice seemed to seep from the very walls around her. their metallic surfaces warping into grotesque shapes that defied logic. In this moment of abject horror, Dr. Lila Chen realized she could no longer trust her senses, or perhaps it was reality itself that had betrayed her.
Chapter 5. Unseen Forces. Ring-a-ring-a roses, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The childhood tune, once innocent in Dr. Lila Chen's memory, now played over and over in her mind like a broken record, each repetition more sinister than the last. It was almost as if the very walls of the underwater facility whispered the lyrics, syncing with the rhythmic thrumming of her heartbeat. In the claustrophobic confines of her research lab, surrounded by the abyssal darkness of the Mariana Trench, Lila felt an unshakable chill that seeped into her bones. Her once steady hands trembled as she tried to make sense of the data flickering across her screen, numbers and graphs that spoke of phenomena not just unknown to science, but seemingly impossible. "Dr. Chen," a voice pierced through the silence, causing her to startle. It was Rodrigo, one of her colleagues, his brow furrowed with concern. "You've been at this for hours. Maybe you should rest." She shook her head, her eyes never leaving the screen. "I can't. There's something here we're not seeing." Rodrigo hesitated before sitting beside her. "We've all noticed strange things," he admitted in a hushed tone. "Sounds with no source, shadows with no caster. But what if it's just the pressure? We're miles below the surface. It could be affecting our minds." Lila considered his words. Could the abyss be playing tricks on them? Or was there a deeper, darker truth lurking in its depths? The day's work left behind an unsettling cocktail of half-finished theories and inexplicable occurrences. Lila struggled to hold on to the rational thoughts that had guided her career thus far. But in this moment, they were like grains of sand slipping through her fingers. She returned to her quarters, a small room barely larger than a closet with walls that pressed in too close for comfort. There she lay in her bunk, enveloped by darkness both inside and out. Sleep evaded her as she stared into the void above. It was then she heard it, an inexplicable sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. A low hum followed by a soft whisper, indecipherable yet unmistakably sentient. Lila's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to call out, to demand an explanation from whoever or whatever mocked her from beyond human perception. But fear rooted her in place, leaving only whispered pleas to a reality she hoped was still there. "Is someone there?" Her voice was timid against the omnipresent hum of the facility's life support systems. No answer came, only a sudden drop in temperature that saw frost forming on the metal surfaces around her, a physical impossibility at such depths where the facility's temperature control should be absolute. Morning came without rest or revelation. The team gathered in the mess hall, their faces etched with wariness and worry. "We need to consider evacuation," suggested Dr. Jameson uneasily as he clutched his coffee mug like a lifeline. "We can't leave." Lila protested sharply, more sharply than she intended. "There's something here that challenges everything we know about our world. And what if that something is dangerous?" interjected Maria, another teammate, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. The debate continued with no consensus as Lila felt an invisible divide growing wider between them all, a chasm as deep and dark as the trench itself. Later that day, while examining samples alone in the lab once more, Lila thought she saw something move in the corner of her eye, a fleeting shadow that darted behind one of the machines. She whirled around, but found nothing except for the cold machinery and lonesome specimens bathed in sterile light. The day faded into evening with no progress made and no comfort gained from fruitless discussions and unending data analysis. That night, as Lila lay awake again, every creak and groan of the infrastructure magnified by silence, a sensation brushed against her mind. It was neither thought nor touch, but something beyond comprehension, unseen forces reaching out from within the abyssal plains below. And so she lay there, surrounded by darkness, both physical and metaphysical, teetering on the brink between science and madness, the rhyme still echoing ominously through hidden currents. "Ashes, ashes, we all fall down." Chapter 6. The Abyss Gazes Back. "The wheels on the bus go round and round," she hummed, her voice a fractured whisper, "all through the town. Dr. Lila Chen's words twisted and warped as she stared into the inky abyss outside the facility's thick glass windows, the nursery rhyme morphing into a chilling echo of her spiraling mind. It began with a shadow, or perhaps it was a trick of the light, a fleeting glimpse of something lurking beyond. As Lila peered into the trench's eternal night, her heartbeat quickened. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, half expecting it to ripple like the surface of a disturbed pond. The abyss gazed back with a silent, oppressive stare that clawed at the edges of her sanity. The once bustling research facility now seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with unspoken terror. Lila's colleagues tiptoed around her, their sideways glances betraying their concern, or was it suspicion, as they whispered furtively in shadowed corners. The weight of their gazes felt as tangible as a damp cloth smothering her face. "Did you hear that?" she asked suddenly during an evening meal, her voice slicing through the quiet chattering like a scalpel through skin. The others paused, utensils hovering midair. "Hear what?" Dr. Adler, her closest ally in this submerged sanctum, replied with furrowed brows. "The whispers." Lila's eyes darted wildly. "They're calling to us from the depths." There was nothing, only the hum of life support systems and the distant groans of the trench walls contracting under immense pressure. Yet Lila heard them, sibilant voices that twined around her thoughts like kelp around an anchor. Sleep became a stranger to her. At night, Lila lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling as shadows danced in rhythm with her ragged breathing. Each creak and groan of metal sounded like encroaching footsteps. Each flicker of light cast grotesque shapes that pranced in the periphery of her vision. One night, or it could have been day, time had lost all meaning. Lila found herself drawn to the research lab. The creatures from the deep floated serenely in their containment tanks, their bioluminescent glow casting otherworldly light upon her face. She reached out to touch the glass, and it was then she saw it, something vast and incomprehensible, moving just beyond their prison walls. With every fiber of her being screaming in primal fear, Lila stumbled back from the tank. The room spun around her, and she could no longer tell if she was falling or if it was the world that tipped on its axis. She woke on the floor, gasping for breath as if she had been drowning. A nightmare? But the icy vestiges of fear clung to her skin more persistently than any dream ever could. "We have to leave," she urged Dr. Adler, when she found him poring over data charts that no longer held any meaning for her. "And go where?" he shot back with uncharacteristic sharpness. "We're leagues beneath the surface, Lila. You need to rest. You're not well." But rest would not come. The final time Dr. Chen ventured to the glass wall separating humanity from nautical oblivion, she witnessed what no human eyes were meant to see, a swirling vortex of writhing shadows and light that beckoned to her with promises of dark revelations and answers to questions best left unasked. When they found her again, she was curled up on the floor, arms wrapped tightly around herself as if holding her own sanity together by sheer willpower. And so we leave Dr. Lila Chen at the precipice between reality and madness, whispering nursery rhymes into the echoing expanse as something ancient and nameless whispers back, her fate hanging suspended like a lone diver in an unfathomable sea, tethered by a fraying line that may snap at any moment. The abyss gazes back. Chapter 7, Lingering Dread. Tick-tock goes the clock, even for the deep-sea flock. Dr. Lila Chen sat motionless, her eyes transfixed on the abyssal expanse beyond the thick glass of the observation deck. The faint hum of the underwater facility's life support systems was now a sinister whisper in her ears. The darkness of the Mariana Trench seemed alive. Pulsating with secrets and malice, it pressed against the walls with its crushing, silent weight. In the corner of her eye, the shadows danced, skittering away when she turned her head to look at them head-on. This game of hide-and-seek with things unseen had become her new normal. Her colleagues moved around her, specters in lab coats, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and fear for their colleague, or perhaps for themselves. Her research lay scattered on the steel table, sheets filled with scribbles and diagrams that she'd once hoped would unravel the mysteries of this alien environment. Now, they were just paper monuments to her unraveling sanity. A shrill beep from a monitor cut through the stillness. Dr. Chen barely flinched. She'd heard it before. the equipment picking up frequencies that shouldn't exist at these depths, sounds that bore into your skull and left echoes. A voice broke through. Lila? It was Dr. Amelia Harrow, reaching out with a trembling hand to touch Chen's shoulder. You should rest. Chen's response was a whisper, barely audible over the omnipresent hum. Sleep is no refuge. It's there too, waiting. Dr. Harrow exchanged a worried glance with another researcher before retreating slowly, leaving Chen alone with her vigil. Nights melded into days without the sun to tell them apart. Chen felt as timeless as the deep-sea creatures they'd come to study, creatures that now seemed like harbingers of something unfathomable. There was no dramatic crescendo when it happened. The ending came as a silence that devoured sound and light alike. The facility went dark. Monitors blinked out one by one as an oppressive powerlessness took hold. In this blackout, reality itself seemed to blur, and Dr. Chen could sense their presence, those unseen forces now unbound from the shadows. Her heart raced. Every primal instinct told her to flee, but where could one go in this underwater tomb? And then it appeared, a glow in the depths. Not the comforting luminescence of bioluminescent creatures, but an eldritch light that offered no warmth, only cold revelation. "What are you?" she whispered into the void. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, and for a moment, it felt as though the ocean itself responded to her plea. "The same thing you are," a voice replied from everywhere and nowhere, a voice not heard but felt within one's marrow. Dr. Lila Chen didn't scream. There was no point. The facility remained silent, except for the distant and ever-present hum reminding those within of their isolation. When power returned minutes or eternities later, it was impossible to tell. Dr. Chen was gone. Her notes lay where they were, her pen beside them, as if she might return at any moment to continue her work. The research team searched every inch of the station, but found no trace of their colleague. Only questions that none dared voice out loud. They would leave eventually. Reports would be filed citing an unfortunate accident or perhaps an unexplained disappearance. But in hushed tones by flickering fires and under secure roofs far from the ocean's embrace, they would always wonder about Dr. Lila Chen and what lay waiting in the heart of our planet's deepest abyss. Wonder about what truths lurked beyond human understanding. And sometimes, late at night when their homes were too quiet and darkness pressed against their windows with curious intent, each would hear it, a tick-tock rhythm like a clock counting down to something inevitable and wholly terrifying.
Thank you for listening to my latest sci-fi horror story. I hope it sent shivers down your spine and kept you on the edge of your seat. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like and subscribe for more bone-chilling tales in the future. Your support means the world to me, and I look forward to sharing more terrifying stories with you. Stay tuned for more horrors that will haunt your dreams. Thank you again, and remember to keep the lights on tonight. Good night. Thank you for listening to my latest sci-fi horror story. I hope it sent shivers down your spine and kept you on the edge of your seat. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like and subscribe for more bone-chilling tales in the future. Your support means the world to me, and I look forward to sharing more terrifying stories with you. Stay tuned for more horrors that will haunt your dreams. Thank you again, and remember to keep the lights on tonight. Good night.